Welcome back to episode 6, Southern Shooters. We are sitting here with Joseph from Outdoor in Color. He's currently sitting at, I believe, 10,000 followers on TikTok, 6.8 thousand followers on YouTube, and even more on Facebook and Instagram. So, man, I appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me on, John.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I know I've been watching your page for a while, man, and I'm telling you, I'm impressed. I am impressed of how you were able to, bridge that gap between, the hunting and the outdoor world for somebody who may not have ever even, thought about stepping out and touching grass, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
such an amazing thing to see how you were able to blend, not only just the outdoor side of it, but you're putting in recipes, cooks, you're doing all these awesome things, you're blending it in with your family. It's so amazing to see.
Appreciate that, man. It's a lifestyle, man. It's a lifestyle. I want people to see it, from beginning to end. So that's kind of my passion there. So
Yeah. So what made you actually start filming and going like, hey man, this is something I want to kind of put out so that other people can see it, the perspective from my POV of my life.
I mean, I've always, my dad took my brothers and my sister out, plinking 22s and then, hunting and fishing. And my older brothers, they just took off with it. And I was obsessed like with Bassmasters growing up. And just, as I got older and got into bow hunting and then out of college, I had a lot of friends that did hunt, didn't hunt, like a lot of foreigners actually that were I've taken, hunting before. So I have a passion of taking out, new hunters and fishermen. And then of course having, getting married and then having kids, your kids typically always, want to get into what you do or vice versa. So my kids have been, driving me to be a better outdoorsman, fishing and hunting. So I was like, man, I should be documenting this. Like I already kind of documented, like just, taking pictures and, just as memories, but I was like, I should, start this. So it's multifaceted. It's, obviously, people say, why do you have to mention, your race or this in the outdoors? It's a positive thing to, promote diversity outdoors. We should be inclusive to everyone, from new hunters to experience to you used to do it or your dad did it but never got a chance to take you out or you just never done it before. So regardless who you are, I want to inspire you to, get started somehow or ask questions. I'm not an expert. I'm not anyone that's a professional. I'm just someone who loves the outdoors and wants people to, come along with me. So promote diversity, encouraging parents to get out there with their kids, connecting with new hunters, fishermen, and giving them advice or um, that sort. So that's my passion is the outdoors, and then kind of bringing people along with me.
Yeah, man, I can't agree more. I think that's such an important thing that um there's a missing link somewhere, between those people who, whose parents did hunt and never took them out, and I see it all the time with the sailors that, I serve with. And it is such an amazing thing when you get to introduce them to something that they so desperately wanted to do but never had the opportunity to. And you get to see, these grown men, these grown women just like they're little kids all over again, and they're like, well, what's that? Why does it do that? What does this mean? Well, how do you tie that? Why do we have to watch the wind? Like, and little things like that are what I think is so amazing. And I just recently, the last couple years, I actually have a bunch of film that I'm just trying to put out. I took out some wounded veterans. I've taken out,
Yeah,
new hunters. I've taken
that's
out.
awesome.
I have a video that I'm getting ready to post of a pretty strong vegan who was like, hey, I will never hurt an animal in any way, form, or fashion.
That's
And
awesome,
I actually
man.
can,
Wow.
yeah, I convinced her to go out. And once we got in the truck, we were kind of sitting there and she was like, okay, I understand now. I get it.
Hmm.
And I was like, all right, success, man. That's wonderful. We didn't even kill anything. I don't think we saw anything. I think we saw like an owl. Like,
And I mean, that's what we really need. And you had mentioned before we, started the podcast, is you had a previous guest on talking about public lands, and there is so much, it is a big hit with selling off public lands, wilderness areas becoming converted to be able to drill all this. Like, if we don't get people on our side to understand what we do and why we do it, we're doomed. Like, we're not going to have, public land to hunt on. That's not to, let's say, fear mongering, but a lot of places, that, people live in out west are, being threatened to be sold off, like where they grew up hunting, where their grandparents and their parents before them hunted. And if we don't get people to see the good side of what we do and why we do, our numbers are declining, farms are getting sold off. The families that used to hunt and brought their kids up, maybe that son or that daughter got a job in the city, and then that parent passed. That land is gone. No one hunts it anymore. It is now a neighborhood or a development. So, um, kudos to you for taking out that vegan. I mean, that's the stuff we need. We need to get people to see like we're not all bloodthirsty killers. There's a process of what we do. So that's really awesome, man.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing to explain to people who don't understand, why we are driven so passionately about the outdoors, right? It is so much more than just going out for a kill, right? I enjoy sitting in the morning, in the morning stand, watching the sunrise, hearing the birds, hearing the woods wake up, or being on that lake, when it's glossy water and there's nothing else on the world that matters than right here, right now. Those are moments that I think so many people are missing. And yeah, if we don't really start getting people to understand, that we are not bloodthirsty monsters. We are not out here to kill Bambi's mom on a daily basis. We are not out here to hurt Bambi, and this is something that I've said so many times on previous episodes, is this comes down to being self-regulated as an ethical hunter and an ethical fisherman. These are things that if you're not practicing that on a daily basis, then the image that you are perceiving to anyone else and everyone else around us is nothing but horrible people who just are just here to watch the environment fail. And it's so much more than that. We are
Mhm.
conservationists. We want to see this, God's not making any more land. So we need to protect the ones that we are, the land that we do have. And I think that's such a misunderstood thing when it comes to this environment that we're in now. And I think social media has played an amazing role, but I also think that it's been misused by several. um,
Yeah.
and so they're seeing two aspects and they're like, we don't know which one to really go with. So and that's why I think it's so good to promote people who are the ethical portions of this, the conservational portion of this, and not just the guy that's out there to put a dough down because why not,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but man, so let's go back on your past. So what
Mhm.
was you know I know you said you've been doing it with your family for a while, but from where you started, your outdoors, your hunting, your fishing, what how has your reason for hunting and fishing changed since you started?
That's a really good question. The reason, obviously, as a younger kid, it was obviously following the footsteps of what my brothers and my dad did. And, my dad, hunted, or I have a funny story. When I was, I think around 5 years old, we hit a deer, um, in this old van. I think it was like a Quest van, something like that. And it was still alive. So my dad, had to call police and all that. The cop dispatched it, and my dad threw it in the van, like right by me. I was like, oh, and my dad was an opportunist. Like he does not hunt as much. He always goes on our annual dove hunt, but he does not deer. He hasn't deer hunted in like probably 20 years plus. But he hunted for sustenance, for food. So I love cooking. I do those wild game recipes, but I just love eating wild game, and I love to show people the versatility of it. Um, and then just gain the knowledge. Like I've said, like I don't consider myself a professional. Like I am learning stuff from new hunters, hunters my age, younger hunters. Just learning a lot of stuff that wasn't, as disposable to us. Like we can listen to podcasts and really, really fast forward. Like if you're a new hunter, you can pick up so much stuff on podcasts and YouTube videos versus, when we started, hunting as a, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. I've gained a lot of knowledge. Hunting has changed as something that is, something I want to do full time. It's something that I want to show others, and it's not a hobby; it's the lifestyle. It's something that I'm passionate about. Like I want to teach my kids about it. the importance of being a steward of the land, being an ethical hunter, shooting correctly, like everything is just, do it for the right reasons. If that kind of answers your question, but I love the process, not just shooting the animal, but tracking the animal, figuring out, where I hit the animal to make sure I'm making an ethical shot, and then processing as much as I can. I've dabbled in eating different parts of the animal now. I've eaten liver, and
Yeah.
I got my
Yeah,
first
man.
elk, and I got my first elk in 24, and I kept his Rocky Mountain oysters. I keep it a little PG, but I tried those, and I
Yeah.
won't try those again. I always say like I'll try things at least one time, but one of those, and I actually kept the tongue, which actually I did. Elk tongue tacos were actually really good. But if
Yeah.
that gives you a snapshot of how I've changed into more of it being a lifestyle versus just kind of doing it because my dad did it, or my brothers did it, but really, really taking a deep dive into it and learning as much as I can because I'm still learning as of the day.
Yeah, man, and I think that's so important, right? And I think for those of you who are first coming into this, right, and you have your reason why now, your reason why now may not be the reason why in 3 years. Once you dabble more into this and you become one with this, and I know that sounds so cliche, but it really is. If you actually embrace the lifestyle and you embrace how you just interact on a daily basis with
Mhm.
the environment around you, the food that you eat, right? Like, you're not going to find better rich protein than the ones you go and get yourself. And it's the same thing of like gardening, right? um you're not going to get better protein, or produce than, when you go and actually you're gardening it yourself. You're doing the
Mhm.
things that you need to do. And it's such a clean and healthy lifestyle that I really wish, more people would actually really get into and study more about.
Mhm.
There's a lot of health benefits from a lot of the animals that come around. So, that's awesome, man. And then, to kind of go on that, and you mentioned it just a few minutes ago, and I think I mention it every podcast because I want people to realize that the definition changes for the person that
Mhm.
you ask, right? How do you define an ethical hunter slash fisherman slash outdoorsman in today's world
Yeah,
versus 10 years ago?
it's different. Very different. Are you asking that question? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like young Joe shooting his bow was letting it rip. He wasn't paying attention to the deer's mannerisms. Was his head down? Was the head up? If their head is down, they can spring load those shoulders and drop a lot faster.
yeah,
Just paying attention to the deer's mannerisms. If there's different every hunter's on a different journey as far as, let's say, white-tailed deer hunting. You can be in the field of like you're just a meat hunter, which is great, or you're someone who, if it's brown is down, which is great. If that's what you like to do. And then I've been in that same bucket, but once you've got a couple shots under your belt in harvest, and you shot the spike, you shot the butt buck. I'm still shooting butt bucks sometimes on accident, but they're tender.
they'll trick you.
Um,
They'll trick you
but
every time.
anyways, I've stereotyped and like I want to shoot a 6 pointer or 8 pointer or a bigger buck, the 3-year-old deer and then the 4-year-old deer. And now I'm kind of in the upper echelon of trying to shoot in something 4 or 5, even 6 years older because I like that chess match. So that's changed from just wanting to shoot anything versus wanting to wait, watching, how deer are. That younger buck typically is the first deer to come in, very not aware, or he just, when to be cutting right to him and he's just not paying attention. But there is a huge difference with a mature buck. Of course, you can get lucky and be in the right place at the right time, but once you're in their woods, they know you're in there. If the wind's not correct, if thermals are dropping, their advantage is always a 90% advantage, in my opinion, and a 10% to us to, be able to figure out their pattern. That wasn't really ethical, but ethical as far as, it used to be browning down and just shooting anything, but just paying attention to the woods, not just shooting to shoot. Making sure I am taking down an animal as fast as possible. You do have bad shots with your, archery equipment, even shooting. But just making sure that deer is in the best situation to make an ethical shot where it's, not alert. Yes, of course, there's times where we have to do that, but really taking the time to think through the process of should I shoot this animal? Which way is it facing? Is it quartering to? Is it quartering away? Is it looking at me? How far is it? Just paying attention to those details is probably how I've changed to be more ethical versus younger Joe just letting it rip.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing, man. And I tell, I've said it before on the podcast, and I'm going to say it 150 more times. Ethical hunting and ethical fishing is something that you practice daily. And if you're not stepping into those woods and you're not consistently and constantly thinking about it, being like, hey, I need to pay attention to this. I can't, I'm not just going to go in here and let an arrow fly, without, preparation of, is this entry wound going to be enough to hit vitals where this deer isn't going to suffer for very long and it's going to be a quick and humane kill. Am I going to release the fish that good and well is not of size, even
Gonna,
if it's an
yeah,
inch close, right?
yeah.
We all know those kinds of fishermen. They're like, you can stretch it. No, don't. Like, just let it grow. It's fine.
Hmm.
And I say it a lot. I've done it in the past, and it really wasn't until the last 5 years that I really started getting into. I mean, I've been hunting and fishing as long as I can remember, and it wasn't until I probably the last 5 to 8 years, I would say, that it was something more. And it was
Hmm.
like, hey, let me pay attention. And there's times that I go out there and in the middle of my hunt, I'll decide, you know what? I just want to learn something today. And I'll take my arrow out of my quiver and I'll put it back in my quiver and I'll just sit there and I'll watch, because you can learn so much more about just viewing and watching than you can, taking that doe that walks out. You don't have to. You can sometimes just sit there and watch them and they'll teach you something. And to fool a wild animal in their environment, that should be the coolest experience in the world to someone. When they
Hmm.
don't even know you're there, that's a pretty amazing experience. Now with that though, right? And that comes with patience, that comes with time. These are skills and attributes that you learn over time hunting and fishing. But now I want to ask you, what values do you think, hunting teaches younger generations that, those who, aren't paying attention to the podcast, the YouTubes, their
Hmm.
dads, the older generation, what values do you think the younger generation are missing by not paying attention?
Oh, patience. Patience is a virtue. Like patience, taking the time. If you're wanting, and there's a lot I could talk about. Like if you're wanting to shoot a mature deer, and every time you're shooting a 2 or 3-year-old buck, which is not, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to kill a bigger deer, you have to wait. You have to have patience. I mean, of course, that can carry outside of to work and life in general. But safety, safety is a huge thing. I tell my kids, having them using their own firearms. Like my oldest son is 9. I trust him shooting a shotgun, dove hunting, aiming correctly, not swinging the barrel at people, keeping the barrel down, always finger off the trigger, safety on and off. But my 7-year-old son does not have that safety control, so I have to really, really watch him. So letting him know
Yeah,
once you pull that trigger, yes, accidents happen, but you cannot take that bullet back. You can't. It's
right.
going to go out the end of that barrel, and whether you're accidentally aiming at someone's foot, body, you can't take it back. And safety is huge. Um, that's something that if you don't learn right away, you can make that mistake that can alter your life drastically. Or you know, what else? Say that question one more time. I kind of went off subject a little bit.
No, yeah, you're good.
Yeah,
I think like what, let's see,
values.
how did I
Yeah.
word it? Yeah, what values do you think, hunting teaches the younger generation that they're, the ones who aren't paying attention are missing
Mm.
today?
Hmm. That's a great question. So safety, patience. Like taking care of the animal. Like there's a lot of things with, when you're skinning a deer just to make sure, um, if you're a person that guts the animal, there's a lot of things inside that you don't want to nick. It could spoil the meat. You could hit the, urine sac and all that. Taking your time, not getting hair on the meat. There's a lot of things that if you go too fast, it can alter the taste of your meat and, age of the meat. There's a lot of things that you can learn, but if you're moving too fast, it could change. And you take care of the meat. When you're shooting something, use all of it as well. I think there's a lot of you've seen the stories of people shooting deer or only taking the back straps and only taking
Yeah.
this. Like, um, take the entire animal as much as you can. Learn about the animal. Learn about the muscle groups. Learn how to, finishing is so good. So I guess that's another thing is taking care of the meat of the animal that you're processing. You took the life of. Very important to do so. Never waste. Don't waste after you kill an animal. Like, don't waste it. Obviously, there's things that you don't eat, but don't waste it.
Yeah, and I think that, sums up, pretty much, I think the same way that I feel, patience is a virtue that, the only way you learn it is by being humbled, if you've never been blown out by a doe, and you're sitting there and you think everything is right, and she picks you out within seconds of
Huh.
being in your area,
Yeah.
that's a really humbling experience, or taking a shot and not knowing how good that placement was. If
Yeah.
that doesn't crush your entire soul, that should wake you up to the point where you're like sick to your stomach thinking about, is this deer, was it ethically shot? Was it, did it expire in a timely manner where, it didn't suffer any longer than it should have? Things like that I think are things that the world as a whole, is watching. And I
Hmm.
think that's what's so good about social media now, and us, and a lot of people filming their hunts now. They you're watched. You're not, if you just wasted your time filming and you realize after watching back the film, you're like, I'm not posting that. You
Hmm.
just learned something, and now you should probably change that. You should probably fix
Hmm.
the way that you are. um but yeah, man, I think those are amazing things. And it one of the things that I learned pretty quickly, I brought my deer to an old man to teach me how to process it. And I got it into his building, and he sat there and he just sat next to the deer. It was a doe, nothing crazy. And he just sat there and he just kind of petted this dead deer. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm just taking in for a moment to realize that me and you are the only two human beings to have touched this animal.
Yeah.
And that was eye opening. I was like, wow, okay, I get it now. So, I think that's a perfect way to put it. But, let's, but with that though, right? There's also been, and I don't know if you've noticed it. I think I've seen it really the last 5 years. Um, do you think that the number of hunters will increase or decrease in the next 20 years because of, the way society has put a image on this world that we so desperately love?
It's hard to say. I think there was a decrease, right, before COVID, and then COVID happened, all the nonsense. People were like, "I gotta get outside." I think we had a big bubble of hunters. I think the next 20 years, I think it's going to. I don't know. It's a hard. I want to have faith and say it's going to get better and increase. I think it's going to increase. I really do. I have faith that it's going to increase, but I feel like with everything, there's always going to be ebbs and flows, and I think we're kind of in a trajectory right now. We're in a trajectory where people are starting to take more interest in being, sustainability. Um, Prices in food are so high. People that would just eat fast food are now having chickens in the yard and getting eggs. People are, thinking that, the farming industry, not the farming industry, but the meat industry, the farming, the corporate farming is a little unethical. So people are starting to purchase their own, cows and growing them up and butchering. I think the world is, obviously not the world, but I would say specifically the United States. I think it would increase. I think it slowly is going to increase. Social media is a curse, a blessing and a curse. I believe with hunting, people. There's a big argument that like social media for hunting is worse, because it's blowing up spots. But we're getting people outdoors. Like, that is not that the ultimate goal. If we keep things to
Yeah.
ourselves, if we don't inspire others to get outdoors, if we don't talk like we're talking, if we don't take the person that's never hunted, the vegan out, it's going to decrease. That is a fact. But if
Yeah.
we do things in a positive way, we encourage people, we do what we're doing, I believe it's going to increase. 20 years, I think
Yeah.
it's going to increase. Hard to say.
And I've asked this question several times, and I'm still torn every time I think about it, because I do think it does increase, but I think, there is enough things in this world that if we don't fight the right way, it will
Correct.
decrease. And it's not
Correct.
because of the want of somebody, but I think it's the, ever growing society that, land doesn't mean what it means anymore. They don't have that same respect for, the wildlife reservations, the public land, state parks. Like, those things are, and I don't think anyone really has noticed it. And I encourage you, if you haven't ever really paid attention, just Google public land decrease, and you are going to nearly throw up when you realize the amount of land in the last 8 years that has been taken away, that was previously there, that is no longer there anymore.
And no one knows about it. The average
Yeah,
person
and
doesn't know about it.
that's what I'm saying, man. Like, most people don't realize that, and for the hunting community and the fishing community, that's a detriment. That
Hmm.
is that's a slap in the face almost. And so that leads me into to the next question: is what do you think the biggest threat to hunting and those getting into it is for the next, say, 10 years?
The biggest threat for people that are getting into it to lose
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, just what do you think the biggest threat to hunting and fishing is in the next 10 years?
I mean, you can say people getting into it for the. I mean, this is the light side of things. People can get into it for the wrong reasons. With social media, the bad side of the hunting and fishing is instant gratification. They're watching somebody catch, 30 bass over and over, and they go try it and like they don't catch anything. So it's like I'm done with this fishing. Or same thing with hunting. I've gone on public land and people are killing these giant bucks. Like that's rare. You have to put in the work. I think
Yeah.
on that side of things, instant gratification could decrease and be a threat. But we're not going to get into politics, but there's millions of acres of land wanting to be sold. And
Yeah.
that is a huge threat. If we did not have all these big brands and hunters and influencers talk about it, in our faces, people would have been like, nah, it's not going to happen. It would have happened. It's still
Yeah.
trying to happen. We thought it was done. It is never going to be done. There are going to be greed, no matter what side of the aisle. Greed. They want
Yeah.
land, and that's going to decrease hunters and fishermen, their access. It's going to be like, I don't have any place to hunt anymore. Private land is privatized. That's the bad thing about selling off public land. Privatize. Everything's going to be private, where you have to, if you're not rich, if you can't pay to play, you can't be a hunter or a fisherman. So that's the biggest threat, I think. And I hate to say it, but we could be moving in that direction if we don't wake up and talk about it like we're talking now.
Yeah, and I said this, I think the several of my episodes so far. You know, we need to wake up. You need to look around, and if you are just an average Joe who works in New York City or some of these big cities that, you don't even realize what, like, you've never seen a lightning bug, please, I literally, I encourage you to just Google something about, public land or millions of acres, and you're gonna see thousands of stories of things that are going on right now, that if we don't continue to have these true conversations to build an understanding for those who may not understand, we're going to lose it, and we're going to lose it really quickly. It's not going to be a slow battle. It is going to be something that is done really quick, and it is going to be extremely painful for those who care as much as, the people that I have gotten to know, and me, and I know, you as a person, that's going to be something that's going to suck, and that kind of, just that mentality, I think, is what's a really big gap, that I've talked about before. Do you think that the hunting culture is misunderstood by the general public? Or, where do you think this mismatch is between us and, somebody just that doesn't pay attention?
Um, Phew, that's a really you got some really great questions. Um,
I appreciate it.
so like for the non-hunter to not like, understand, I would say like again, social media, the bad thing about social media, if you do something like people shooting deer in an area they're not supposed to shoot deer, like, I've seen, in the Facebook groups, or like the horror of seeing a deer with an arrow stuck in its butt It's like that is
Mhm.
not good. They associate with that with hunting, and everyone's a bad hunter. Everyone's shooting at random deer and just shooting to shoot. I believe that is not good for the hunting community for non-hunters to see. Um, what else? Say that question again.
Yeah, so, like, do you think that the hunting culture is just misunderstood by the general public? Or do you think that it is, you
100%
know, and
misunderstood. Yeah.
yeah, 100, you 100, yeah, I think I would agree to that. I think it's misunderstood, and that's why I think, these outreach programs where you can go hunt with somebody who's
Mhm.
experienced,
Yeah.
if you have a friend and you're just even just the slightest bit curious, go. I'm telling you, go. It will change your entire perspective on
Mhm.
everything that it is that we do. Um, Now, I will say, and that comes with a catch 22, right? There are good hunters, and that goes back to the ethics part, right? It's the practicing of the ethics. There are good hunters, there are good fishermen, there are bad ones too, right? There are bad eggs in every basket. And, with that, be careful who you go with because it may change your perspective, and it may just it may just unfortunately put it in concrete if you go with the wrong
Correct.
people.
Very
So
true.
I think, and then as far as that, with it being misunderstood, how do we start building that, that bridge, that gap? How do we build that between us and the general public?
Mhm. Um, how do we bridge that gap? Phew. Bickering amongst ourselves. There's so much nonsense within the hunting community. We go at each other's throats when we should embrace our differences of you dog hunt, you still hunt, you only use a recurve, you use a compound, use a crossbow, you use iron sights. Like that's great. Do what makes you happy, but don't judge others for what they do. They're outside. They're hunting. If you're ethical, you're following the rules, you got your license, let people do what they want to do. Yes, you can, in your own mind, be like, I wouldn't do that. That's fine. That's you. You wouldn't do that, but don't judge others. I think the bickering within our own community is also seen by the people that want to see us fight, the anti-hunters, but non-hunters that don't really have a dog in the fight. When they see that, like, why would I want to be a part of the hunting community when they're making fun of the guy shooting a crossbow? Which I've made jokes about that, but I've taken out guys that have killed their first deer with a crossbow. I don't care. Shoot the deer with whatever that is legal and ethical. Like that's great. But I think within our own hunting community, we got to fix banter's okay, right? As long as we're respectful. Banter is a part of hunting and the hunting camp, the deer camp, but we bicker and really, really show the world that we are not cohesive. So I would say we really need to fix that to be a better representation for non-hunters to see.
Yeah, I love that outlook on it. Let's fix inside before we try to fix outside, right?
Mhm.
We can't start healing those around us and encouraging those to come in when they're like, yeah, but didn't you just like badmouth this guy on social media because he's doing it that way? Be like, yeah, I did. That guy, screw that guy. Like we can't. There, it is okay to have a banter. I hear it all the time. I see it all the time. I am guilty of doing it, right? Like I'm an avid bow hunter. I've hunted rifle. I grew up hunting rifle. And I've tried the crossbow scenes. I've done as every form of hunting that you can think of. Um, so that I have the ability to have that banter, to be able to say, like, hey, I know how you do it and you're doing it wrong or you're doing it unethically. That was the reason that I did all of those. Do I have a preferred method? Sure. Yeah, everyone
Mhm.
does.
Yep.
But is there more than one way to skin a cat? No, there's not. There's more than one way. So why are we sitting here worried about it? You're touching grass, you're outside, you're contributing to conservation. I think that's what all that matters. And I think if we aren't fixing inside of our community first, we cannot even begin to start thinking about fixing the gap between us and the general public. So I agree 1,000%. And then I said it earlier too, the outreach programs. Do you think more hunters should be in the outreach programs or trying to, at least
Mhm.
put themselves
Yeah.
into a situation to take out the people who don't understand?
I think, again, my opinion, we have a responsibility. Again, not everyone is, I will not judge the person that wants to be by themselves. that doesn't want to disclose, that doesn't like social media, that doesn't want people to know where their honey hole is, that doesn't want YouTube videos showing their, their public spot. Um, but if you want hunting to continue as a tradition, you have to open your heart and your eyes. That's fine if you want to be that way. That's fine. I'm not going to judge you on that. Like if you want to be the person in the corner, be like, I'm going to do my thing. I have what I have going on in my life. I don't have time to do this, that. That's fine. But I do implore all hunters and fishermen, wherever you are, take people hunting. They don't look like you, that aren't a part of your niche or your crew. You know when you go fishing or hunting where someone looks like they don't know what they're doing, they're tying off hooks and they're losing bait every time, or they're flinging something and their line's popping, or they're missing a bunch of, you're slamming fish over and over and over again. You're like, what are you doing? A lot of people will be like, keep it to themselves and be like, I'm getting my limit. I don't know about you. It's like, help that person out. Like, you never know when you teach that person, you're going to teach that person. Like Greg that you just had in the podcast, I'm so proud of that dude. He came from not knowing anything about hunting, and now he is a better mobile hunter than me. I will not saddle hunt. I've tried it with friends. I just think it's a lot. I like climbing stands. Again, that's a different like. I like climbing stands. Yes, they could be heavier, but um, I feel like it's a lot to do with climbing sticks in the dark if you're hunting in the morning, and vice versa coming down. But Greg has done a phenomenal job. He's taken out hunters to get their first deer. He's, doing, the Wounded Warriors, taking out veterans on their, hunts. And he got involved with, North Carolina Wildlife Resources and, done some, what do you call those? Not conferences, but like how to skin an animal. Like they do those. But like, I think
Yeah.
hunters, if they truly care about hunting not going away, our public lands not being sold, our non-hunters or anti-hunters going at our throats, we have to be positive and we have to reach those that aren't within our community. We have to be inclusive. We have to reach out, or you can't complain. If you think hunting and land is being sold is a bad thing and you want to keep everything yourself, I'm not going to judge you, but you have to do something. You don't have to, you don't. Not everyone has a calling, everyone has a different passion. But my passion specifically is to try to show people or show people my passion and have them come along or ask questions or take them out hunting and take them out fishing. But you can't get upset about numbers declining if you are not going to help anyone. So I implore every hunter out there, take someone out hunting. Take your cousin, take your friend, take your coworker, if it's allowed. Take your friend that's like, what are you eating? I'm eating deer meat. I'm eating bear. You eat black bear? Yeah, let me tell you about it. Talk about it.
Yeah.
Be open. Don't, I know I'm going down a rabbit hole, but there it is.
No, I agree 1000%. I think if you were going to sit here and complain and excuse my French, but if you're going to complain and bitch and moan and groan about the way the world is right now and the way that the general public perceives us and how the world is taking away land day by day, but you stand up and do nothing about it, then you have no right to sit here and grope at the ones who are active in the community, who are trying to make a difference. And that is something that I implore everyone every single time. It doesn't matter where you're going, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Just try. Get out there. You
Mhm.
would be surprised how much the Fish and Wildlife Reservation and how much the Fish and Wildlife officers need help
Mhm.
to just you know make someone's day different, taking out those wounded warriors, right? And you don't even have to have public or private land to do that. You can do that on public land. They are well aware that if they go out hunting they may not get anything, but it is the experience that they're looking for. It is getting out and touching grass. It's having someone take the 5-10 minutes to just introduce themselves. Hey, I'm so and so and I want to take you out hunting today, or I want to take you out fishing today. Those things are such a crucial play into our playbook that I don't think is being played enough. And that really goes into a several questions I have gotten, that I've seen on multiple people's accounts, is and you've already kind of touched a little bit into it, but I want to touch it just a little bit more. Does the hunting community help each other enough, or is it too competitive where people getting into it don't want to ask questions because they're like, somebody's gonna be like, no, I'm not helping you. Why would I help you?
Yes. Again, the curse of social media. You can go on any hunting page, showing shoots a buck over or deer over a bait pile or shoots a smaller buck. They're in there grilling them. And then a new hunter's like, why would I want to be a part of that? Like we got to do better. We the internet is terrible. It could be a blessing. Like I've met some great people. I've gone fishing and hunting with strangers. I just got back from a trip. I met a guy through Instagram that's a guide in Alaska, and he in his traveling is a travel nurse in North Carolina, and he's like, if you're ever in the area, hit me up. And I hit him up, and he took me and my kids shrimping. But we're our own detriment. So the internet, like within the hunting community, you can go to any hunting page. The negativity's got to stop.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And I think all of us have experienced that moment, right? Where you jump, especially those who are public land, warriors, you guys specifically, I'm currently stationed in the state of Connecticut, and all I have is public land to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is difficult. And I've never hunted, like I'm telling you right now, I grew up in Alabama. I've hunted Alabama. I've hunted Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina. I've hunted most of the southern states. I have never known difficult hunting until I moved here. And it is
Wow.
such
Yeah.
a different just mentality. It's a different beast. They do things differently here. And, I finally asked somebody, and like I watched them pull up to the same place, and I was like, hey, I don't know anything about this land. Can you please help me narrow down this 700 acres down to at least 4? Give me 4, and I can figure a little bit more out from there. And having that conversation and just being bold enough to just come up to this guy. The guy was like, hey man, I've got a stand right over here. I didn't even really feel like going today. Why don't you go sit in it? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, are you serious? Like, you'll find good people. Um, am I going to sit here and say that I'm going to give you my every single hunting spot? Probably not. No. But if
Mm-hmm.
you send me a picture of a satellite image and say, hey, this is the area I'm hunting, we're going to break it down. I'm going to tell you where good stands would be, why based off the shelf, the ridge line, the creek, the dry bed, the thermals, the wind, what stand you need to sit and why. I'm happy to break that down with you all day long. We can go into a TED talk like you've never seen before. Perfectly fine with me. Is there competitiveness? Of course there's competitiveness. There's competitiveness in everything we do. But we've got to lower that standard down for people who don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
it is the way it is, and we that's not going to change until we decide to change with ourselves first. um and then with that, I think technology is really helpful to these new hunters, but I also think it's a nightmare too. I think it's a catch
It is.
22 that people
It
don't
is.
realize, like, so I want to see what your perspective is. How do you feel about the technology, like the cell cameras, the GPS tracking, the AI scouting, the
Woo!
drones?
It's a
How do
lot.
you feel about these?
I think, because I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say, I've never used. I use cell cameras, right?
Mhm.
Um, I'll tell you the pros and the cons. Like I feel like when I used dummy cameras, there was a little bit more excitement. I mean, there's still excitement. Trail cam picture gets me excited, but there was something
Yeah.
special about go checking that. Uh, dang it, I don't. We use cell cameras now. The SD card. So like, getting the SD card from a dummy trail camera was like awesome. You got to get back home, put it in the computer or your card reader, and look at it. But now everything is instant gratification. We can be like, nothing's there, nothing's there. Um, I'm not gonna hunt that area. Or, oh wow, that big buck's in there. Let me go drive really fast and go kill him. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of pros and cons. I do think the technology kind of has taken away from the woodsmanship. It's taken away of your own hunter's intuition. Like I'll be honest and say, like I have decided not to hunt because of a buck I was after didn't show for the last 3 days. You never know if he's going to show or not. You really don't. But the cameras really have changed. The cell cameras and instant gratification has changed how you can hunt. You shouldn't. It shouldn't, but it definitely does. And then you're obsessive over deer because you can see them anytime they cross that camera. So that's the negative
Yeah.
thing. I would say if we didn't have it, I'd be fine. Like it would probably make me more obsessive to put boots on the ground to see what's in the woods. Maybe that could be a bad thing. But on the positive side of things, um I have 3 kids, and I have a wife, I have a job. I can't go out and, check the SD card all the time, so that cell camera gives me in the positive side of things, it gives me a snapshot of what's going on in the woods so I can decide when I wanna hunt versus hunting on a day that is not the best. That camera has helped me save time, it's helped me kill deer, where I wouldn't have it has helped me see deer when I've never been able to see deer. It's helped me pattern your deer. Yes, has it made it easier? 100%. I will not say that, but there's pros and cons. But I think has it hurt? Yeah, definitely. Drones, people are misusing that. People are using
Yeah.
drones to find deer and then go on hunting. That's not okay. I do think drones for tracking are 100% fine as long as you are not as long as you're abiding by the rules. I do think we need to have a little more guidelines, but I had to use a drone. I shot the biggest deer of my life. I got a dog first, 6 hours after the shot because I couldn't find any more blood after 200 yards. That dog was amazing. That's one of the things. Use technology to get a hold of a dog tracker. That was great, but the dog tracker, amazing. Found the deer in
Excuse
his
me.
bed. It found the deer in his bed. Jumped up. So we're like, okay, he looks hurt, but did I shoot too low? Is he gonna die? So then, what do I do to be ethical to make sure this animal is either dead or alive? I get a drone. Drone flies over, locates him in his bed. And this is a long, sad story, but everyone that saw that drone picture said that buck is dead. Get permission, go the next day. Um, and I had the muzzle loader ready to creep up on him if he was still alive, and he vanished. But I feel like that technology helped me kind of be like, okay, well, this deer is gonna die. He's gonna
Yeah.
there's so much good in the technology, but I believe we would be better off without. I'll be honest, we'd be better off without it. But it does help me as a father and a husband and 50 hours work week to be able to hunt smarter and faster. I would say that.
Yeah, I think technology is great when it's used properly, right? Like, and I know you just touched into that, but like I've done the drone recovery. It's an amazing thing, and it is so useful to recovering the deer that you decided to pull the trigger on, right?
Yeah.
Whether you let that arrow fly or you pull that trigger, and whatever the situation was that caused that deer to take off and that you couldn't find it, I think that portion of it is amazing. I do think there needs to be a little bit more regulations with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if you're going to do it, it cannot be a personal use type thing. I think there needs to
Mm,
be a company, and I
yeah.
think and it's a great company. So those of you guys who are listening who want to try to get into hunting and don't know how, buy a drone. Buy a drone. It'll be here before you know it. I think it's an amazing thing. I think trail cameras, man, are like Christmas Day for me. When
Mm,
I get that trail camera and I get that SD card and I have no idea what's on it, and I'm like, oh man, what's gonna be good, But I tell people, and I've said it several times, and I'm gonna continue to say it because I want people to realize trail cameras are only as good if you use it the right way, right? And I say
right.
that, with general, broadness. It is just a picture. You have no idea what that deer is thinking. You have no idea where that deer is going, why it's going there. That may be its secondary route. That may be because a coyote chased it off its primary route and now it's choosing a secondary route. And you're going to go sit on top of that stand and you're going to sit there for 2 weeks with seeing nothing. I know that because I've done it.
Mhm.
If you take a picture for what it's worth and it's just a picture, then fantastic, right? Now, if you're consistently seeing them, obviously hunt that spot. But if you've put up a trail camera, you have no idea what you're doing, you're on public land, you see a deer and you go hunt this stand or hunt this tree, you're basically shooting yourself into one area and having no idea. You're putting all of your eggs into one basket off one picture. Use them
Absolutely.
for what they're worth. The AI scouting apps, I will tell you, are ridiculously accurate. They are scary. Yeah, yeah. So, like, if you took listen to this. This is absolutely insane. If you take a picture of a satellite image of your hunting land and you screenshot it and you put it into these AI scouting apps and you say, find me the best locations on this land, it will list you out like 12 stands from best to worst, where you should hunt, what time of day you should hunt, the wind you
Oh,
should hunt it on. It'll
that's
tell
terrible.
you like
Instant gratification.
I can
I don't like
you
that.
can
I
go
don't
on
like it.
there and say find me the acorn trees and it'll point
Yeah.
out every tree that is a natural food plot and like it's ridiculously accurate. I know because I tried it when somebody was like, "Hey, have you heard of AI scouting?" I'm like, "No." I was like, "Let me look at it." And I tried it and I had my stands that I took many, many man hours to find. I went out hiking all the time. I was looking for the food plots, looking for the stands, looking for the pinch points,
Yeah.
the shelves, the ridge lines. And I set my stands up. Not only did it pick out my stands, but it then picked out 4 more that were better than mine.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I was like,
Yeah.
this is insane. So I do think well, I didn't have apps like this growing up when we got into
Mhm.
hunting. I had the Farmer's
Yeah.
Almanac.
There's the
Like,
woodsmanship out the window. I do think if you did use that tool, it would kind of sink into you, like, oh, well, this is why that deer came this way, or this is what a ridge is, or this is what a thermal hub is, or this is what is
right.
happening. But I think that takes away woodsmanship. You gotta have to, people say, well, I had to figure it out myself. I think you do need to figure out, but I think I'm thinking about elk hunting, like find me all these north facing slopes and ridges, like
Yeah, no,
easy
and it
button.
would
That's an easy.
absolutely.
That's an easy button. I don't like it, but I do like it. I don't like
Yeah,
it, but
no,
I do like it.
there's an easement, right? And I think
Yeah.
here's the thing that I will implore you to do. Learn how to do it first. And then once you are consistent at doing it and to the point where you can walk into a public land, go do 2 days of hiking, find the places you want to hike because
Hmm.
of the trails, the scouts, the food, the everything that the reasons as to why, then maybe I'll agree to being like, yeah, you can use the AI scouting apps, right?
Yeah, maybe
But
if
I
we
also
let
think
them
it's really
use it for
good.
like a couple times, maybe if there's a
Yeah,
cap on
but
there.
I think it's good for these, these guys getting into it, like you were saying earlier, who are watching YouTube and watching these. I grew up every morning watching the Outdoorsman channel, the Pursuit
Yeah,
channel. I had
yeah.
VGH tapes of like old hunting channels that I
Monster
used to
Butts,
watch.
Real Tree, Bill
Yeah,
Jordan.
yeah, and so I used to, I used to watch these guys and I would like envy them. And then I realized like when you do public land hunting, and you talked about earlier, you're not going to kill this 160-inch deer. Like that's the amount of work that goes into finding that deer and that caliber of class of deer. Listen, it doesn't matter if you shoot a spike, it doesn't matter if you shoot a doe. If you did the work and you did the homework, you did the man hours, and you did what you had to do to get yourself into a position, and all you got is a doe. First off, I hate when people say that. I hate when people were like, "Oh, I just
All you
got a
got is a
doe."
doe. No,
Yeah, be
man.
like, "What? You just
Yeah,
got a deer?" Some dude who's
you
still
tricked the
hunting
deer.
hasn't got one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think technology is great, but I do wonder, and I want to see what you're at now that you know a little bit about the AI scouting. Where do we draw the line between fair and unfair advantages? Where do we take the modern technology and it crosses this border of sportsmanship?
Ah, mm. I mean, it takes away from woodsmanship. Like boots on the ground is king. Um, the pros of it is it can take a new hunter and fast forward their experience by 5, 10 years. Yes, it's a cons. It's an easy button. You didn't do anything. You didn't put boots on the ground. Um, but here's a devil's advocate. Let's just say I just went elk hunting in Idaho. Spent $651 on an elk tag. Spent $190 on the license. Spent $100 on the permit. Spent $450 on a flight. Spent a lot of money on food,
Yeah,
gas, half the rental. Like I see where those tools would be helpful to even the playing field because you got your residents. Again, residents hate non-residents, which I get it. I get that side. But elk hunting's hard. It's a 10%, 8 to 10% success rate, right?
yeah,
That's insane. So I spent, let's just say on the lowest end, the cheapest DIY, $1,500 to $2,000. I can't afford that, 2 or 3, 4 times a year. I'm just, I don't have the facility for that. Some people
yeah,
can, but if I'm using an AI map, it can cut my week hunt into having all these different places of where I should go to like instead of going to 7 different places, it can narrow it down to one. I do see the positive of that, but I do think it takes away from sort of tradition. The true tradition of hunting is like boots on the ground, figuring out on your own. So that's where I'm at. I do think you do need to get boots on the ground, figure it out. Fail. You have to fail. I don't think the AI tool helps you fail. It puts it um, at the snap of a finger. You can figure things out, or it can help you, be successful. I I'm tempted to use it, but I think it's a slippery slope. Really is. I think
Yeah.
it should be regulated. It somehow, I don't know how, but that's incredible. I did not know you could do that. I thought about it. I was like, how can I get can ChatGPT tell me where the angle of the slope? Because elk like to bed below a 20-degree slope angle. It's like, can I put that
Yeah.
in there and can it tell me? And like now you're telling me it can. Like that's crazy. That's
Yeah,
absolutely crazy.
it absolutely will. I'm almost convinced that ChatGPT will tell you how many moles are on that elk's butt. Like
God.
it's ridiculously
Yeah.
accurate. But and I think that is something that I with the older hunters who have been hunting for minimum of 10 years, right? Who have done the homework, done the research, did the man hours. I think technology is an amazing thing now that we know how to still do it. But I think if you're coming into it, you still need to learn, and that comes with that other time, that other thing, that value we were talking about, patience, respecting the environment that you're walking into. This is not your home. This is not your place. This is theirs. You need to respect it, and you need to understand that the thousands and thousands and thousands of years we've been doing this hunting and fishing routine with these animals, they never had what we have now. And so enjoy that you know tribute that that you get to enjoy. I think it's super amazing to see. And I do think it is kind of unfair in a sense, and I do think it's fair. If I get, I put in for an elk tag last year. Unfortunately, I am active duty Navy, and so I didn't get the opportunity to. But the guy that did go, I gave it to him, and not only did they not see anything, I think he walked like 50 miles, and
Mm,
he came up empty handed, and I was like, man, that's part of it. This now probably takes that percentages, from 8 to 10%, probably 30 to 40. That's a huge percentage when you're doing elk hunting or moose hunting or bear or whatever it is that you're doing. It's a huge percentage. I've even used it when I go out deep sea fishing,
yeah.
and I'm like,
Wow.
find me the shelves in the water that the tuna are sitting on, and it'll point out exactly. It'll give me the latitude and longitude of where to go.
Incredible.
Like, it's genuinely insane, what the technology today are able to do. And but with that, that also comes down to what is it that you're trying to do? And I want to know what your stance is versus, trophy hunting versus meat hunting. Like, are you like, where are you at with the role that you play now, the reasons you hunt, versus, a buddy of yours?
Hmm. Well, I think like in my little hunting group niche is there's some new hunters that are gun hunters and there's hunters that are bow hunters and there's hunters that use recurves. And there's a guy that use a crossbow, he's got a regular bow, and I tell them where they're at in their journey. It's like one guy was like, "Man, I saw a spike," and I was like, "Why didn't you shoot it? Like your first archery deer should be whatever is uh, ethical and legal." So, like I've accidentally shot button bucks and spikes thinking they were does, but I don't care. It's a dead deer. I got my heart racing, and I got meat. But I would say I don't like the word trophy. I know it's used. Like
Yeah.
every hunt and every animal that I've harvested is a memory that I could think back on. Like, yes, I brought the elk head back, but when I look at the elk head come out of my bedroom in the morning, it brings me back to how hard it was. The experience of the hunt of a lifetime with one of my best friends I grew up with, almost dying, getting lost. Like I don't look at it as a trophy because as a memory. Yes, you can say, "Well, you got trophies." Like, no, they're not trophies; they're memories that I'll never forget. But like meat hunting versus trophy hunting, you should be doing it for the meat. But then you can say, there's an argument. You can shoot a yearling versus a mature 5-year-old. You're going to get a lot more meat. So there's the
Yeah.
argument. Not, I wouldn't say that's trophy hunting because you can get a higher deer can go up to like 300 pounds. Like that's a cost, but it could be like a 6 point or one of those bucks that just don't or a whole buck. But that's a lot of meat. So I think trophy. I hate the word trophy hunting because it from the non-hunter perspective, the anti-hunter trophy hunting means you are just shooting an animal because it's big and it's huge and it's the
Yeah.
biggest. Oh yeah, I want to
Yeah.
put that on my wall. Like yes, big antlers are nice. Yes, but that meat. Like when I went elk hunting, I missed the cow. Like for me, it was again, it goes back to your journey as a hunter. It's I say new hunter shoot what makes you happy. Try to shoot that 2-year-old buck, that 3-year-old buck, that 4-year-old buck, and then if it's not for you, like I just want to shoot anything I want. That's fine. But for me, when I went elk hunting, like it was, I wasn't gonna care if it had antlers or not. It said a cow or a bull. I spent $2,000. I'm bringing some meat home.
Yeah. For
I
real.
don't like the word trophy hunting. Sustenance is hunting for food is what's most important. It's going to get us the understanding from the outside to but trophy hunting is not. It's going to be like, well, you're just hunting to glorify how big that animal was. Which
Yeah, and
you know,
that's such an a perfect aspect because I've killed 160-inch deer and it's great. Did I get it mounted? No. I have one deer mounted, and that deer was the first deer that I killed when my dad got back from Afghanistan.
that's
And
amazing.
that deer meant the world to me. And it's genuinely a horrible 8 point. It's such a bad 8 point.
Yeah,
And but that deer meant the world. That memory will forever last every time I see this deer. And as much as I remember, the hunts, and I wish people please realize that there is something more than just the hunt. If you guys go eat after a hunt, that I remember more after the hunt hanging out with my family and doing the fun stuff after the hunts than I do actually the hunts. Those moments building memories are things that, waking up in the hunting camp and then seeing the old man, sitting around a fire, drinking coffee and, having them banter, like those memories are memories that I will hold on to forever. I remember most of my hunts, but not as dear as I do, the memories to it. So, and I think that comes into, a lot of the things that people say on TikTok. I see the comments constantly. Um, do you think it's the words that we're using in the hunting community that makes people think hunting is so cruel?
yeah. I mean, yeah, smoked him, double lung, heart
Yeah.
shot, didn't go 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because people don't. I mean, I guess you could say you're glorifying an animal dying. When we say someone smoked them, it means they made a really good shot. We know that deer died fast. But in
Yeah.
a non-hunter's eyes, you're glorifying that animal was murdered. It's bleeding and dying. But no, like when we say you smoked him, you're like, dang, you made a good shot. He's gone. Like, good job. Props to you. I do think our language from the outside does not make sense, or it's like we're glorifying death and killing, but there's much more to it. From the outside looking in, it definitely does not look good or sound good, I would say.
No, no, and I think that's where I think there's a huge gap because of the words or the verbiage that we choose or the images that we show. You know,
Yeah.
I love watching, oh God, what's his name? Steve Rinella. I like
Hmm.
his hunts just as a whole are beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And he shows every bit of it. It's amazing. And I see comments on his post all the time of like, this is so cruel. How would you show this shot? And I remember one of the things he said once was, I didn't show it to harm or to offend you. I showed it so the hunters that knew where the shot placement was to know that this animal didn't suffer, that it died quickly and it was an efficient kill. So I think the verbiage, if we're going to be talking to people who are not in the hunting community, our verbiage really, really matters. And you need to be careful with the things you say. I am active duty Navy and, I come home from work and I'm telling my wife all these things and, she has no idea what I'm saying. And then she's like, so is everyone okay? I'm like, oh yeah, it was a great day. She's like, what? Like, and we all have those communities that you get into, right? It's a niche and the people who are in it understand it, the people who aren't don't. So let's build that bridge of cleaning up our verbiage for those people, that are outsiders looking in, so that they can appreciate it just as much as we do, and the ones that are in there. And I think that's a big thing, that the social media aspect is helping and hurting the hunting and fishing community. So I think we need to get a little bit of a better grip when it comes to that aspect. But do you think that as hunters we need to self-regulate ourselves, or do you think we need to self-regulate others? Do we need to not allow my fellow hunter to be like posting something, and then the verbiage that he says, should I text and be like, hey man, just letting you know, or do we need to allow that to be a self-regulated thing?
Ooh, I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I think publicly we shouldn't, like, um, again, from the outside looking in, it just, when you can, because you can't tell through text, right? Like, if the
Yeah,
person posts a picture and you're like, well, you should have waited, or you should have waited, you should have shot an older deer. Like, um, it should be self-regulated. We should think before we post something publicly. I do think, we should hold, like, I've been held accountable, like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? I think it's important. Like, yes, it's embarrassing. You might want to have a knee jerk, like, who are you to tell me I didn't do this right? But I
yeah,
do think it should be done out of love and respect, and like, hey, I just want to let you know, hey man, looks like you used this. Technically that's against the regulation, because I just don't want you to get caught, because, if a warden sees you, you're gonna get a ticket. Like, do you say that online? I don't think you do. Like, it's just, it does need to be regulated, but we do a poor job at that, because when you look at social media and what everyone says, it's just like you get blasted, publicly
yeah,
humiliated. So I think it needs to be self-regulated, but we have to reflect on ourselves and think about what we're saying to somebody. That it could be a new hunter. Like, don't say, "Why did you shoot that small deer?" Like, that makes you feel like crap.
yeah,
Why would you say that? Like, just
yeah,
imagine if you
mm,
took your son hunting and he shot a two pointer or a spike, and then you post it and you get, why'd you let your son shoot that? Like, it's a spike. Who shoots spike? Let it pass. Like, what are you doing?
yeah,
That's like, just think about it. Think about what you're
yeah.
saying.
Yeah, why are we tearing down, the people who are in our community? I think we need to build them up, and especially, I know my first buck was a spike, and my dad asked me, he's like, "Are you sure you want to take this one?" And I said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And he said, "Okay, let's do it." And then the rule was you can't shoot anything smaller than a spike. The next buck has to be bigger. And it's progressively done that, right? And that was just when I was with him. And now when I'm older, like, I've made the mistake of shooting a button buck. We all have at some point.
Yeah,
And if you haven't, you will. It's going to happen. It's
absolutely.
inevitable. But with that, and it goes back, and I want to tie that back into the technology portion of this too. Um, do you think that the regulations should be tighter or loosened in the next decade when it comes to the hunting community and the fishing community?
That's a tough one. Different states are really, really strict.
Yeah,
Some states are really, really relaxed. I think it depends on state to state. Like, I think we have to have conservation of the animal at its best interest of not over harvesting, whether it be fish or, deer or whatever. The limits have to change if, there's a drastic change in it. The biologists should know the best, and should be taking the best interest of the animal and the hunter at the same time. But I think it depends on state to state. It is I would say probably, again, I can't really put my foot on it. It'd have to be tighter in some areas and looser in some. Like hunting on Sundays on public land. Um,
yeah,
Again, that's a pro and a con. For some reasons, I can't tell. In North Carolina, I don't know if it was for church, or it gives. I think for migratory birds, it gives them a chance to rest, right? So, like, is that fair
yeah,
to be blasting the ducks 24, not 24/7? On Sundays, let them have a rest. Like, or I think some rules you can't duck hunt past noon, or like turkey hunting, you can't duck turkey hunt past one. I think those are in place to give the animal more of a fair chase, because there's a lot more of us after them than there are them. So I think you kind of have to look at it by state in the area, but there definitely could be some tighter regulations, and there definitely could be some loosening of regulation.
Yeah, and I want to I really think that's a great way to answer that is I think we should give it to the states. And I think the biggest thing is I think um the funding for the Fish and Wildlife regulations and the Fish and Wildlife Department needs to be honestly, I think it needs to be raised for the fact that they're the ones who are doing the initial inspects and going, all right, we have this ducky population, we have this deer population, we have this bear population,
Hmm.
moose, elk, whatever. Um,
Absolutely.
and I think if we allow them to come in and do that and do their jobs correctly, I think that's only going to make it better for us in the long run. And I think that's what's going to hold on to this, this for future generations to come so that, my 7-week old, I get to take him hunting in the same land that I know now because I know the land that I know now is not the land that my dad knew. And it's not the same land his dad knew. It gets different with every generation, and I think we need to protect it, at all cost. And with that, how would you describe in your own words of your experience? How do we protect the culture of hunting for long term?
Kind of the culture. I mean, kind of what we've been saying is doing things the right way, being ethical. Um, Hunt and fish and do things right. Like someone is watching, like a warden's watching you. Like when you're with your kids, we all know what right and wrong is. Yes, we do wrong things, we lie, we do stuff that we shouldn't. But when we have kids, we're like, shoot, I really need to clean up that. I shouldn't be saying those words. I shouldn't be doing this. I think we need to pretend or act like someone's over our shoulders, that has the potential to either bring them to the light of hunting and fishing or deter them to hunting and fishing. I think we have to think about, is what I'm doing is what I'm doing. Of course, if you're a believer, like, is what I'm doing glorifying God? Am I doing the right thing? On the non-religious side of things,
Excuse me.
is what I'm doing legal? Is, if a warden was watching right now, would I get a ticket and get fined? If a non-hunter was watching me right now, what would they think about what I'm doing?
Right.
Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And what advice would you give those who are listening who may be part of the Gen Z or the Gen Alpha hunters, the new hunters who are coming into it, who have now this major form of technology, and may not know how to scout and anything. What would be some advice that you would want them if they hear nothing else of this podcast? This is what you'd want them to hear.
Oh, never be afraid to ask questions. Technology is not everything. It should not be all of what you depend on. Boots on the ground is king. Wind is king. Um, don't fall for the gadgets and the gimmicks. Yes, the 100 streams you gotta sell and then get people to buy things, but don't feel like you have to have $100, $300. Yes, these things are nice. $100, $300 gear and this type of gun and bow. Yes, stair step if you have the money to do so. That's fine. But if you don't have the means to buy everything, like basic, wear neutral colors, buy the Walmart camo, start from somewhere, start from scratch, and then build. Like, it's a journey. Hunting is a journey. It is a stair step. Don't go 0 to 100. Um, don't think you're gonna kill a 160-inch buck on public as soon as you hunt 4 or 5 times. You're gonna be humbled. Um, just ask questions. Don't give up. That's probably what I'd say. You got some great
Yeah, I
questions,
mean,
man.
dude, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And with that, and I love asking this question because, I think for the outsiders looking in, it really gives them a perspective of what means to the world. What means the most to us, right? What are the attributes that we've had to learn, we've had to struggle through, we've had to suffer to find out, to get where we're at now. And with that, in your words, right? And you are extremely successful in the outdoor industry right now. That your following base is insane. what is hunting more about to you? Success or the experience?
So the experience. Example is like when I hunted in Idaho, 2024, we've been planning our elk hunt for a couple of years now, and finally, finances are good, and I knew nothing about elk hunting. I knew I needed to be somewhat prepared and be fit and this and that and the other, and I was extremely lucky to be able to harvest on the second day of the opener. Okay, I think in
That's
that
insane.
area, yeah, that area, I think the rate was like, this isn't a brag, 7-8% success rate in the area we were in, and then this past September, well, I was cramping last year. I was cramping, almost died. I got hypothermic. Like I was not physically fit. So this entire last year, I was in the gym, getting fit, just busting my butt, shooting all the time with my bow. I was listening to podcasts every day. I was watching elk hunting every day. I was calling, not every day, but every couple days. Yeah, every time my wife wouldn't, my wife and kids would tell me, shut up. But I was all in, but I got humbled, right? I missed a cow, um, but I had the chance. Like I chased elk. I challenged a bull. I had a bull screaming back at me, wanting to fight and kick my butt. Like that day was incredible. It made spending 2 grand or less worth it. The experience. Like yes, I would have loved to shoot the animal, the elk, but I got to spend 8 days in God's creation with one of my great buddies and share an amazing experience. And then I gained a ton of knowledge about elk hunting. So the next time I can be even better.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's all about, right? The experience of doing it, the getting up in the early mornings, the doing the research, the doing the homework, right? I tell listeners all the time, if you if you scout twice as much as you hunt, you'll be 3 times more successful. And it's the honest fact. If you're putting boots on the ground and you're going out there, you're looking, you're listening, you're watching, you're doing the work, and then you go hunt, you will be 3 times more successful than you would be if you just decide, let's go, let's see what happens. Let's climb the nearest tree I have and go for it.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think that's a big thing. And then, another thing that, I want to see, what your biggest misconception is. What do you think what misconception about hunting really bothers you the most over your years now that you're hearing some more?
Misconception about hunting. I mean, we touched it like we're bloodthirsty killers. We just shoot to get the biggest antlers. We don't eat the meat. Like bear hunting, people don't eat bear. Why would you kill it? Misconceptions. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say that's pretty much it. Is we're doing it for the wrong reasons, which some people are, but I believe the majority of us are doing it for purpose, and we're doing it to eat. We're doing it to some people. Some are doing it to survive. They don't have the means to always buy groceries. They're hunting to live. I like to hunt. Like if I could, if my wife is she's probably telling me to hurry up, but if I could, I'd live off the grid. My wife would not like that. My kids probably be fine, but like if I could, I'd hunt to live. Like I would love to be disconnected from, the technology. But you need money, and you got bills, you got a
Yeah.
house, you got responsibilities. But I think it's most important to do it for the right reasons. And the misconception is I think hunters are doing it for the wrong reasons, and there's not really a rhyme or reason of what we do. We just like to, shoot things and kill them.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to, to answer it. And, I got, pretty much the same mentality. If I could live off the land, great, fantastic, I would. Reality is unfortunately there are some things that I do have to go get from the grocery store. And my wife does love, the modern society, and she likes to be able to go to TJ Maxx when she wants to. It is what it is. Can't win everything, but she lets me go. That's all I can ask. But man, I got one last question for you, and then we're gonna wrap this up. You know, um, you're out here doing amazing things, man. You've got the outdoor cooks going on. You've got the hunts. You're out there in in other states. Your following is huge. You're showing respect to nature, and you're introducing it to kids, and you're getting people who may have never left the couch of the day in their life and have never touched grass, interested of into this community. What legacy do you want to leave as a hunter and as a fisherman, as a father? What legacy to you is the most important to leave behind so that your kids can carry on, and those who are watching can continue to carry on?
Oh, bro, that is a good one. Ah, what legacy? I think a lot of things I can say. I think with the YouTube, social media thing, people are like, well, you're doing it for views and attention, this and that and the other. I feel like people got to understand, like, when you are creating a business or a creator or influencer, my end goal is to do it full time, but how do you get there? You got to get people to like you, to like your stuff, to get views, to see brands had to see you in the light of, wow, this guy's got a personality. People like him. Like, that has to happen. Like, I can't go full time in the outdoors and provide for my family without backing it up, right? On the side of things of why I started it, like, even if it flops at the end of the day, I'm still gonna have these. Like, even if I didn't film my document, I'm still going to do them. I'm still going to have fun with my kids. I'm still going to introduce new hunters, whether there's a camera or not. I'm still going to enjoy hunt camp with my friends. I'm still going to teach my kids the right way, the ethical way, and how to skin fish, how to skin animals. But at the end of the day, what I love about, like, I lost a friend, a really good friend named Lee. He was a great man of God. He died in Jamaica on a mission trip. Tree fell on him. He didn't know it
Jeez.
hit him. Fell right on top of his head, and he was gone. But he lived life on fire, and I think about, at any moment, my one of my kids could pass, my wife, me. Um, but what are they gonna know about me? What are they gonna what are my kids? What am I gonna know about my kids? Like, if one of them passes, I have hundreds of videos. Yes, it's on social media. We could say it's the worst thing ever, but if I pass away, my kids have kids, their kids have kids. They're gonna see me enjoying life. They're gonna understand I'm doing and why I'm doing it. They're gonna see he loves to cook. He loves to bring deer jerky to random people at work and cook random stuff and eat elk tongue and elk Rocky Mountain oysters. They're gonna be like, dude, this guy really loved life. He loved God. He loved people, and he loved the outdoors. I believe if that's what people get from it, it's a win. That's my legacy right there. Like, it doesn't really matter if I kill the biggest deer. Yes, I want to kill a mature deer that's big, but does it matter at the end of the day? As a legacy, no. But it does matter that I have put in the work. I have studied a deer. I patterned that deer. I put boots on the ground to figure him out, and I killed him. That's what I want people to realize. Not that he is a huge buck, but I put in the work, I put in the time. I understand deer's mannerism, which I learn something from a deer every time, but I think that's what I want people to understand. It's um the passion.
Yeah, man. And I think that's a perfect way to sum up, your, you know, amazing YouTube channel. Your TikToks are amazing, and I think, it's an amazing way to wrap it up. We all want to be known, and as far as, as I'm concerned, the biggest things that I want said about me is, hey, he was a family man, he was an honest man, and he was a hardworking man, right? And those three things right there, that makes my legacy. I can die happy. I'm okay. If I've left those behind, and I've left, tips and tricks and tools so that my son and my kids can use, if they ever need it, to go out there, they're like, hey, remember what dad said? Hey, do you remember what dad said? Or having those people who are coming on to my channel and going, man, what did that one guy say, that podcast I listened to, or what was that YouTube video that I watched? Like, I want those things to be said. And I think that's the whole thing of why your bio, it spoke a lot to me, is we're inspiring others to enjoy the great outdoors. Like, that's the biggest thing about it, man. Go touch some grass. It's amazing. You will be surprised at what you do when you touch some grass and you get some some sunny D in your life. It's crazy. um But man, I can't appreciate it. Tell you enough how much I appreciate you being on, and and inspiring those around us and in your community to get out there and do the amazing things that God put on this earth. Right? Is to go out there and enjoy it. It's not going to get any better than what it is right now. Unless we fight for it. And I know it's late, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and talk to the listeners.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. You had some really thought-provoking questions that I've never been asked. Of course, we think about them as hunters, and but really did a good job. Thanks for having me on.
Man, yeah, man, I appreciate it. But those who are listening, follow him at the Outdoors and Colors, and he's on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, anything that ends with a social media account. He's got it. Go give him a follow. Go watch his account, man, and y'all are gonna learn some amazing things. But I'm gonna catch back up with you later in the season and see what's going on, and how the hunt's going, and how you're recovering from the Idaho trip, and we'll see the amazing things that you post, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I appreciate it, brother.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on.